Hi, it's Penny here. So I've just filmed, and I think it would have been up a few days ago for you, a video where I went through the most underrated books on Goodreads, in my opinion. This video, we're going to do the slightly meaner and more controversial video where we go through the books that I think are the most overrated. This is based on the books that I've read. So my Goodreads read list has 1,225 books on it. I've ordered it by average rating. So the books with the highest average rating are at the top. I don't think it's overrated, but at the top is Magic Claims by Alona Andrews with an average rating of 4.79. So that's where we're starting. I don't know how far down we'll go. Maybe to 4-ish? Because any book that's like over 4 is very highly rated. So let's see how many books at the top of this list I think really don't deserve to be there. To be honest, any book that has like over 4.7, I do wonder, like, is it just that it's really found its audience and nobody else was reading it, which is maybe the case with Magic Claims, because that book, you have to have already read 11 books at least to get to that one. So like, sure. And I guess maybe the next one is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. Also very high because you have to have read so many pages to get to that one. Anyway, we're not talking about books that are rated high and there's sense for it. We're going to look for ones where it's rated really high and I don't think it should be. Of course, this is my personal opinion. You'll probably disagree. You might disagree, you might agree. We'll see. Anyway, we're going to start with Sarah J. Maas. There's actually a couple here that I can see by her. So we've got Kingdom of Ash. Again, the 7th book, so maybe it's just funneled people down. I only gave it 2 stars. Maybe that was a little bit harsh, but I really don't think it's as great as a lot of people make out it is. So if you don't know, it starts out kind of as a Cinderella retelling. We have this girl named Selena who used to be an assassin, and she has been taken out of this prison in order to participate in this tournament to become the king's assassin or something. But there's so much more. The world kind of expands because the king of this world is like this evil magician guy. There's also like fae and shapeshiftery people, and just like there's a lot going on in it. And witches and dragons, like there's a lot of cool things, but the way that Sarah J. Maas writes, like, I don't know why it's so hyped, but I know some people really like it, and like, maybe I get it. But we also have A Court of Mist and Fury on here, and honestly, like, I guess if you're really attached to the characters, I can see why you might like it. But for me, I just felt it went on and on with the characters just telling these boring stories, and I really didn't like it. I think it's overhyped. Like, I can see why people would like it. I just don't understand why the average rating is 4.63. Like, really? Anyway, I do also think, so many unpopular opinions on this, I do think Crooked Kingdom is overrated. Again, I still think it's good. I can see why people like it, but 4.61? Really? I'm not going to give synopsises for these really hyped books because if you don't know, I think they're overhyped, so probably best you keep not knowing. I don't know. What else do we have on here? We also have some Skullduggery Pleasant books. So it's a lot of books from series that are right at the top here. But I think it's book number 9, which is the second to last book, is the highest Skullduggery Pleasant book on here with 4.6. So again, you have to have read quite a lot of books in the series before you would get to this one. But I found the Skullduggery Pleasant. So we're following this girl named Stephanie who kind of goes into the world of supernatural and becomes like a detective, or works with Skullduggery Pleasant, who is a detective in this supernatural world, or like he's a skeleton detective, and we're just learning about the world, saving the world multiple times. There's prophecies, and it's kind of like quite a stereotypical middle grade, you know, on that boundary between middle grade and YA, where the series kind of grows up with its readership. I really liked the first few books. I thought they were really fun and well written, and then by the last books, again, it's just going on way too long. And I feel like a lot of these books I'm talking about in this video, they start out not too bad, and then I think they just get so hyped that the authors aren't being reined in enough, and the editors are letting them like include all this stuff that unless you're like a super fan, you're just not going to be interested in, and it's like just way too much. Like, cut it down. Those last couple of books in the Throne of Glass series definitely could have been edited to be shorter. Definitely. Anyway, I'll try not to keep going back to Sarah J. Maas, but I felt the same way about Skullduggery Pleasant. I think a lot of people who like that read it when they were younger, but reading it as an adult, I liked the first few books, and then I couldn't enjoy them. I can also see on here we've got The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the sequel to Name of the Wind. You know, I really loved that series when I originally read it, and I think just over time not getting that third book is like tainting my memory of that series. And as well, I have seen a lot of people pick it up more recently and criticize it, and maybe it's becoming, because it's so old, a lot of the way it deals with certain issues are no longer the way we deal with those issues, and so it's kind of becoming problematic just by becoming so old. And it's just so frustrating that he hasn't finished the third book. And I do think as well, honestly, Wise Man's Fear is probably longer than it needs to be, especially like there's a bit where he like kind of gets kidnapped by this fairy and or like this fae woman and like has a lot of sex, and did that need to go on as long as it did? No, it did not. So I actually think, even though I liked Wise Man's Fear when I read it, and I've reread it since then, I also liked it. The audiobooks are very good. But do I think they deserve as high a rating as they have here? You know, honestly, probably not. And maybe I'm just getting bitter and twisted about what's happening with that series, but I don't think it deserves that higher rating. Then we also have Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'm surprised that it must be higher than The Martian because I haven't seen The Martian on this list. Oops, I scrolled and now I've lost my place. Oh, I think I skipped down a bit because I got overexcited. But anyway, Project Hail Mary is, I'm trying to remember, what is spoilers in this book series? Basically, this man wakes up in this room with no memories and he has to kind of learn about what's going on. It's a really unsatisfying synopsis. However, that's kind of all you can give because part of the enjoyment of the beginning of the story is learning about what's happening. So I did really like the friendship that you get in that series. There is another character that gets introduced that I really loved, but everything that kind of goes on in his memories didn't make a lot of sense. I didn't really like it. And there were some things about the main character that were kind of really annoying. So like, I like some aspects of it, but again, it does go on a bit in some parts, and I don't think it deserves a 4.52 average rating. No. Anyway, one I've noticed that I've skipped over is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I actually have it just here. Honestly, I thought it was good, but the ending was a bit shaky and like the humor got a little bit grating. I suspect if people like that kind of humor, they would really love it. But I do really wonder if some of the people who are saying they love that book, did they really? Did they really? Or did they really love it as much as they said? Like, I think it's a good book, but like, is it amazing? I don't know. The world building's really great, but the actual story, I think it could have been better. I think Sanderson can do better, but I think just the context of how he was writing that story, probably not. Anyway, I don't think it deserves a 4.54. I do also have on here The Tea Dragon Tapestry by Kay O'Neill. So Kay O'Neill's a New Zealand author, and normally as a New Zealander, I would try not to say anything negative about New Zealand authors. However, I do think like the Tea Dragon book series, so this is the third one in the series, and I think the art is really beautiful, but the stories are often not as much as I would like. Maybe that's because these books are more targeted at young children, but I just felt like by the time I got to the Tea Dragon Tapestry, there was very little story in that, and so like 4.51, I don't think so. The next one on this list is back to Sarah J. Maas, and that is House of Sky and Breath. Is that actually rated higher than the first book, House of Earth and Blood? Is it? Oh my goodness, it is. So I actually really liked House of Earth and Blood. I was really surprised because I hadn't liked a lot of Sarah J. Maas stuff that I'd read previously, or like I hadn't loved it. And like every series I'd read by her had gone downhill. So I went into House of Earth and Blood quite hesitantly, and I actually really liked it. I thought the main character was really strong. She's kind of this party girl, but then when she gets involved in this murder mystery that's going on in this like urban fantasy world, she kind of shows her strengths and uses her party girl side to her advantage. And I kind of like the romance, which is weird because I don't normally like romance, but I really liked the first book. Thought it was great. The second book, House of Sky and Breath, like the average rating here is 4.51. I've seen so many negative reviews of House of Sky and Breath where people loved the first one and just thought the second one's plot was bonkers and just like very scattered and no longer focused on Bryce and her strengths, and like all of the strengths that were kind of set up in the first book were almost destroyed in the second book. The romance was awful. But again, I have seen people rave about House of Sky and Breath, but I would have thought that there were enough people who hated it that it would have brought that down. So like 4.51. Really? What else do we have on here? You know what we have on here? Changes. The 12th book in the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Look, the Dresden Files. I know a lot of people really love it, but a lot of people also read it. I would say especially women read it. And those first books are the worst. Like Harry Dresden is always going on about how he needs to protect women, and just this whole attitude towards women is kind of awful. And there's a few times where it seems like maybe Jim Butcher is trying to be a little bit more like, well, that's just the way the character is, but I don't really believe that. But then there are also things like where Harry will almost double down on his approach to women, and it kind of makes me doubt that Jim Butcher really gets the criticisms. Anyway, sometimes Dresden is very annoying, but there are parts of the plot that I really enjoyed, and book 7 I really loved. However, I think it was book 13 I gave up on because I hated changes. Something changes about the series. This is actually, I think, the first book in the series with only a one-word title rather than a two-word title. So things change quite significantly, and just Harry's whole motivation through that whole book was very frustrating to me. And like the whole plot just went on, and it was kind of stupid. And then the next book was even worse. And I gave up on the series because of this book. So why does it have an average rating of 4.5? I think it's just a sign that the Dresden Files was never the book series that I wanted it to be. Just such a shame. We also have The Winter of the Witch, which is the third book in the Winter Night trilogy. What was the first book called? The Bear and the Nightingale? Yeah, The Bear and the Nightingale. And I didn't mind the first two books in the series. I didn't think they were amazing. But the third book, so there's kind of this relationship in this book series, which I don't enjoy. So I don't really like relationships where we have some kind of young girl having a relationship with some older or immortal type being. I think it's gross. And the third book really went into that, and I can't remember what else. I really didn't like it. I never thought that whole series was that good, even though lots of people rave about it. 4.5 for the last book in the series, I barely even remember it. Anyway, also overhyped, the Saga series. Do I even want to talk about this? It's a graphic novel series. Lots of people love it. I have loved certain volumes of it, but when you look at the average ratings of that series, they're ridiculous. I will notice actually, I am skipping over some manga that I have rated quite lowly. Like, I think I skipped over up here. I don't know why I'm skipping over them. Something about my subconscious decided they're not books. I skipped over Full Metal Alchemist, which has an average rating of 4.55. I really liked the first couple of volumes of Full Metal Alchemist. Basically, it's about these brothers who one of them ends up losing his arm and his leg, and the other one ends up losing like his whole body. And then they're trying to use alchemy or figure out how to use alchemy to get their bodies back. And I thought the first few were fun. There were some cool ideas, but then the plot just went nowhere. And it was just these characters. Like, I think, again, a lot of these books that are rated highly, that I'm not rating highly, are because people have really connected with the characters and just enjoy seeing the characters doing things regardless of what it is that they're doing. But that's not for me. Even if I like characters in a book series, I want to see them doing things. Also, One Punch Man. I read the first volume of that, and I just don't get it. It's not for me. We also have here, oh no, I'm feeling very negative. We also have here A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. Honestly, I thought it was terrible. I've seen people say it's better than Priory of the Orange Tree, and honestly, I thought Priory of the Orange Tree was overhyped. I think everyone says it's so amazing that it's a fantasy standalone, which for starters is not true because now it's a series, although you don't have to read the series in order, or you don't have to read them, so I guess they're still kind of standalones. Oops, my camera battery died because I've been ranting for far too long. But I really think both those books would have been better if they had been written as trilogies and like fully built things up better and had like a stronger plot structure. Just honestly, no. Overhyped for sure. And I'm always so like I feel bad for people when I see them being like, I'm going to read this book. It's so hyped. I'm so excited for it. I'm going to love it. And then like so often they don't. So why is the average rating so high? What else do we have on here? How far am I going to go down to? Because I'm only at 4.48. Really am surprised how many books are rated this high. You know, another series that's overhyped is the Shadow Me series by Tahara Murphy. The third book here has an average rating of 4.47. The third book was the most nonsense of the whole series. I really loved the beginning of Shadow Me where we're following this girl who's in like this mental asylum, but it's like the asylum's being deserted and it's just the patients that are left and they don't have any lighting or any kind of care anymore, so she's kind of living in like a really awful situation, and the way it's written really shows like how mentally unstable she is, and it was honestly beautiful. And then it turns in just to kind of like a typical YA dystopian, which wasn't for me, unfortunately. But it also, like, it's just such nonsense. I know fiction is not real, but I like to be able to pretend it is, and everything that happened in Shadow Me made no sense. It's kind of trying to be X-Men, but I don't understand. I don't understand. Oh no, you know what else? You know what else I think is overhyped? A Song of Ice and Fire. So A Storm of Swords, the edition I read was split into two books. So the first part has an average rating of 4.46. 4.46. I think one of my early years of reading, I read a book from the series and it took me almost the whole year because it was such a struggle to get through. I do think there are some amazing things happening in the plot, but there's also large parts of the book that focus on characters that aren't important, aren't doing anything interesting, aren't interesting people in any way, and like the way he writes is quite dense and like, I don't know, there's a lot to get through if you're not enjoying yourself. So like, even though there are some great parts of the series, there are some parts that are really boring. And even worse, he's probably never going to finish the series. I mean, I probably don't need to expand on this next one very much, but also The Wheel of Time. Watch any of my recent vlogs or wrap-ups to know how much I have not enjoyed my time going through that. But Towers of Midnight, the 13th book, so the second to last book, an average rating of 4.46? Have you guys read it? Honestly, I get that some people like it. That's great. I'm very happy for you. But there is no way it should have an average rating that high. Again, it's just so much more like nonsense, waste of time stuff. I think, again, actually, if you relate to the characters, then you're happy to read all the stuff that's happening. But if you don't, you're like, what is this? So Wheel of Time, super overhyped, in my opinion. Oh no, this is just like an unpopular opinion thing, because I also think overhyped is the Red Rising series. I read the first book, didn't like it. I thought, no, this is a very popular series. I'll try the second one. A lot of people said the second one is better. I thought it was worse. So it's got an average rating of 4.45. Really? But I know a lot of people love it. I don't. I just never connected to the characters. This is my big problem. Maybe I just don't like people. We got some more Dresden file books in here. Oh, we've also got the Sandman comics. So I started trying to read that series. I thought I would really love it. There's some like elements I really like. It's kind of like this god of dreams, and I've kind of forgotten the story, but I kind of just found the whole thing very creepy in a not great way, like in a creepy man kind of way. And I've seen people say that they think it's kind of taking that male gaze and like twisting it, or like having nudity but not in a way that's attractive to the male gaze. But like, honestly, that wasn't my perspective of it. But maybe my perspective is the twisted one. I don't know, but I wanted to love it, love some elements, but overall I was really disappointed. I don't know why it would have such a high rating. Surely I'm not the only way that felt that way. Oh no, there's so many books on here that I really didn't like. The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Like, I thought it was okay. There's some cute moments, but everyone kept saying like it's such an adorable story, and like a cozy fantasy that's like a feel-good story. And I read it and I did not get that out of it at all. I thought, even though it was written in kind of that young children's book writing style, so it kind of has that more whimsical feel. Like so many of the themes were really dark, and I didn't necessarily appreciate the way they were all dealt with. I like some of it. Like I think I started out really liking it, but then wasn't sure where it really went with any of the themes it was trying to address. And I will admit to being really surprised. There was kind of a controversy around that book when people discovered that it was based on like residential schools. And I was kind of confused because I thought it was obvious that that's the kind of thing it was based on. Anyway, totally overhyped in my opinion. I don't think it belongs in the category of cozy fantasy like a lot of people put it at all. I mean, I'm down to 4.4 now. These books are like hyped, but not hyped. I actually think some of the books on this list, even though their ratings are very high, I never hear anyone talk about them. So I think they're almost underhyped because people don't know how amazing these books are, even when they're rated really high. Maybe I need to do another video around those kind of books. Oh, here's one. The Book Thief. The Book Thief, average rating 4.39. I did think it was an interesting story, and it possibly did make me cry. So the story is told from the perspective of death, and we basically follow this young girl who is taken, I can't remember the exact details anymore. I think she's taken away in a concentration camp, and then she kind of escapes and is looked after and starts stealing books. Like, it's set in World War II. Very emotional story, but I just felt like there wasn't enough done with this idea that death is the narrator. So much potential in that. Didn't do hardly anything with it. And a lot of the story wasn't written as emotionally as I think it could have been because of this narrative structure. So like, I know a lot of people love that book, but I was kind of disappointed with it. I'm always hoping people won't go into it with, like, I think if you go into it not being quite aware of all the hype, you'll probably enjoy it more. Also overhyped, the Poppy War series. So the Dragon Republic specifically. I only read the first book, the second book. I did like the first half of the first book, and then I just didn't agree with everything that happened at the end. Then the second book, not only did I hate everything that the main character is doing, which is kind of the point of the book, but like, I just didn't necessarily like a lot of the messages. I don't know. I feel like I just don't like the way that Rebecca Kwong approaches certain themes, because I really didn't like Babel and the way it approached the themes either. It's not that I necessarily disagree with her significantly, but it's just the way that she presents things. Anyway, I thought the Dragon Republic was super boring, and I didn't like anything the characters were doing or any of the characters. And I mean, I don't like war books, and it's all focused on war, so probably just not for me, but I don't understand why so many people like it. Have I ranted about enough books yet? I'm feeling very like, ugh. I don't normally like to say mean things about books. People can like whatever they like. Okay, well, another one that I do think is overhyped is the Wayward Children series. So this is a series where children find these magical doors. I don't know why I'm giving the synopsis of this one, and I haven't with others, but children find these magical doors, and like every second story is one where they find a magical world, and then the other books are like quest stories where these children from this boarding school where they all have gone to magical worlds in the past and are trying to find their way back, like they go on these quests. So the first one I've come to here is book number 8. And I especially felt like that. Like it had potential, didn't reach that potential. And I don't even think that it really dealt that well with the themes, although admittedly, it's not something I've experienced, and it's something that Shauna Maguire has. So maybe it's just me, but I wanted it to be more. And with all of these Wayward Children books, like they're so short that I don't feel like they ever get to where they need to be worthy of a 4.35 average rating. And there were some weird things in that number 8. Like honestly, I read the reviews. I've seen lots of people loving it, but I don't get it. Maybe that one's me. Another one. I need to stop soon. Another one that I really don't think deserves the hype is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So this is the story of Achilles, but it's told from Patroclus's perspective. I think my lighting's going funny as the sun's coming up. So it's told from Patroclus's perspective, and Patroclus is a nothing, no personality. Why is he even there? Why does he even have this relationship with Achilles? Like, why is Achilles even interested in him in any way or form? He's so boring. And also, it kind of paints Achilles as like this really awful person, which I guess he kind of is, but like, I just don't know. And so many people are like, wow, I love the way it tells their relationship. But it never really even seems like a real relationship to me. I thought it was awful. I don't get it. I'm skipping over some of these that I do think are overhyped, but like, I still felt they were good. I wish I had kept track of how many books I've talked about. Okay, I'm down to 4.27 and I'm not seeing anything that's making me like particularly annoyed that it's so highly rated. And like a lot of the books now are from the series that I've already talked about. Oh no, I just saw something out of the corner of my eye. Okay, one more and then we'll stop. So you know what's also really overrated? The Witchlands series by Susan Dennett. So it started with Truth Witch, which I know a lot of people loved. I will admit that I have seen less and less people continuing on with the series. However, I can see the third book, Blood Witch, here with an average rating of 4.27. I read it and that's where I gave up on the series because it was so boring. So boring. Like, it has some really interesting ideas, but just the whole way the story is constructed is like focusing on all the wrong things. And like, as well, the whole first book, the reason why a lot of people loved it was because of this friendship between these two girls. One's a truth witch who can like tell if people are lying or not, and the other one is a thread witch who can see connections between people. Cool ideas. But after the first book, they get separated and then they're never together. So like, you don't get to experience any of that friendship. Anyway, I think it's overrated, as well as all the other books that I talked about today. Let me know if you disagree with me. I would love to talk with you about it down in the comments. Also, let me know if you agree with me because I would like some validation. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.